Hello again, everybody. I'm doing a little bit more work on the Ruston. I think I finally decided on a paint color. It's kind of hard to find exactly what color I was supposed to use, and going by some YouTube videos of some restored Ruston engines, there's some lighter greens and some darker greens. Also, myself, I am not a painter. I'm not too great with mixing colors and everything, so I want to use something out of the box. And so as it turns out, Rust-Oleum Hunter Green it seems pretty nice. This is the same, I believe it's the same color that we used to paint our Atlas Imperial diesel that has been restored and is currently at the farm in our new engine building. So that's the color I'm going to go with this. So as you can see, I'm putting the oiler together finally for the last time. I tested it in the last video and it worked, so I took it apart, cleaned all the oil out, and first I masked everything off and just painted the inside here because it was originally white, and then masked everything off again, painted it. I stuffed paper in the holes here, in the threaded holes, to protect the threads so you don't get paint in there. I left some parts bright, like this handle here, the little crank pre-oiler handle. Now this engine, there were parts that were painted like a red sort of. You can see a little bit here where I had taped it off. And here's another example. This is the push rod. It's got that same red color on it, or the water outlet there. And best I can tell, there's no Ruston out there that has been painted selectively green and red. So I thought that was kind of strange. So I guess someone at some point painted part of the engine a new color, and maybe it's a primer. It kind of looks like the rusty metal primer, but there's definitely evidence that it had been painted, hand painted later on. Like this is where the water outlet would go on top of the cylinder, and you could see a stray brush stroke there. There's the original primer or green of the engine, and then a brush stroke of the red. And of course the nut is painted on the face of the cylinder here. Here's another stray brush stroke. So for some reason, parts of this engine were painted this orange-red kind of color. The injection pump was that way, the lubricator, see the lubricator rod. And I wanted to keep this original, so I did a lot of YouTube research and Google image research, and I did not find a single Ruston engine with multicolored parts. They're all green with yellow and white pinstriping, I believe. So that's what I'm going to do for this engine. So here I am installing the two check valves back into the bottom of the oiler, and they all have a copper sealing washer on them, and there's a machined face that they seal against, which of course got painted. I was way too lazy to tape that off, but with a crappy knife I was able to shave that paint off pretty nicely. Even though this paint has cured a little over 24 hours, it's dry to the touch, but Rust-Oleum takes a very, very long time to really get rock solid. And of course it's cold in the shop too. But I was able to take that paint off nicely. I won't even need to touch it up afterwards, I don't think. Of course this is on the bottom of the pump too. Okay, now it's time to install the rocker arm shaft, I guess you'd call it. It's a couple of things kind of have to go together at once. I have this end cap here just loosely screwed in, and then I fed the shaft in this way, and then the other end cap here I just slid on. There is a packing nut here with some rope packing. I just have it already all installed. I kept the old packing in there. Nothing's gonna really be coming out, I don't think, and it should be easy to replace that packing if it does leak or cause trouble down the road. I have all of these labeled as far as their position, front, back, left, right, because I don't think they're really honed or lapped to their bores, but they were in that bore for a long time, so I plan on keeping them there. So I kind of realized it'd be easier just to take this end cap off so I can slide this shaft sideways and let it totally clear these pistons. And now it can go the other way and engage them. I'm going to put this set screw, or this shaft collar, into place with the set screw. Okay, now time to put all the stuff on this part of the shaft. Now I'm going to digress just a little bit, like I have in the past, about certain machining oddities about this engine, and this is another one. It seems like Ruston really liked to hold tolerances a lot tighter than they needed to be, and not just that, that it seems like they created machining processes that required tight tolerances. For example, this nut, this retainer nut, screws into this cast iron housing, and then this collar with the set screw in it, that set screw goes into a hole in the shaft. So if this nut, if the hole inside this retainer nut is too deep or too shallow, it'll affect the position lengthwise of this shaft, which would affect the position of this hole. And if the shaft is too far this way, you wouldn't be able to get this screw in the hole, and if it was too far that way, there'd be space between the shaft collar and this nut. And everything had to be machined just so for everything to fit nicely and not have interference. I just don't understand that. Like I'm not going to redesign it in my head right now, but it just seems like this was a little more complicated than it needed to be. I mean, did this shaft collar, did this set screw need a hole to go into, or maybe just a flat? And you could screw this down anywhere along the flat that you wanted. I don't know, just a thought. And along with their taper pins too. These taper pins are ridiculous. They're everywhere, and a taper is a lot harder to make than a straight through hole. But anyway, that aside, let's get on to putting this thing back together. So another case in point with this whole tolerancing, dimensioning thing that just kind of is confusing me. I was having trouble getting this taper pin in this spacer collar here, and looking through the hole, I could see the hole in the collar and the hole in the shaft were offset. And the reason is, this shaft collar here, the screw is not perfectly in the center of that collar. It's just ever so slightly off to one side. So what I had to do, I took this whole shaft back out, I took that collar, I flipped it over, or did a 180 with it, so the screw, so the thin side of the screw and shaft collar was facing this way, so the distance between the hole for this screw and the hole for this dowel pin is closer together, so the holes line up. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I don't understand why that needed to be like that. So, I don't know. Anyway, we got it all straightened out. I did a mock-up fit. Everything fits. So, I'm going to slide it together for good now. So first, I got a little bit of oil on this shaft. Just a little bit. I'm going to put a dab of anti-seize into that hole. Slide that in. And that's that. Give it a tap with a hammer. We're all set. Now I'll take this coupler piece. This has no dowel pin. This is supposed to freewheel on the shaft. And yet another thing, I can't help myself but bring this up. It just blows my mind. This dowel pin, it's not even on center. It's off center a little bit. And angled. Angled! Why? And, as if a tapered dowel pin isn't enough, there's also a set screw hole. I'm sure the engineers were convinced that it was an important feature to have that. So this is on there. I'll slide this dowel pin in there. And that is that. Oh, wait a minute. Oh boy. See a problem there? That's backwards. Put that on the correct way. Tap that in there. It's all set. Okay, so now let's slide the sight glass in here. There's two little gaskets. They seem to be pretty decent. So I think I'm going to reuse them. I'm just going to put some gasket shellac on them to make sure they seal properly. There we go, slide that right in there. And another gasket goes on top. And then there's this little retainer screw. Just screw that right in and find a flathead, appropriate flathead to send that in. Okay, the next step is pretty easy. You're just putting the oiler top on. There's 4 flathead screws that go on. Okay, so now with the screws in, holding the top down, we have these stroke limiting screws that adjust the amount of oil pumped by holding down those pumping plungers. So these are all cleaned up, and I'm not going to paint these. These are going to be left bright as they are. I mean, of course, they were corroded when I got it, so I cleaned it up the best I could. I'm going to leave it this way because I don't like things with threads and springs to be painted, because to me it's a moving part and paint impedes that. So these are going to be left clean. They're just going to be oiled to prevent oxidation. So just thread these in. Any arbitrary amount at this point doesn't really matter. And I'll just spin these lock nuts down. Very last step, putting the oiler glass, the front glass on. I already put the glass into the frame, just 2 little screws and retainers. I'll put these 4 screws in. And there you have it. There is one fully rebuilt Ruston Hornsby mechanical lubricator. The only thing I have left to do is just, like I said, touch up these screws and the little bits and pieces here and there. Those screws. And just do that by hand with a little paintbrush. And that's it, ready to go. So it's a small piece, so I was able to do this completely while I'm waiting for some other things to happen with the rest of the engine. Still trying to figure out how to get the cam off and all that. So thanks for watching, everybody, and make sure to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the things that are going on at the farm and the progress with this engine and everything else that we're doing. And hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. And leave a comment down below if you feel so inclined. And thanks for watching, everybody. See you at the farm.